Yeah, topic of the week this week is Excel podcasts. So as far as I know, there's only, a handful of Excel podcasts out there, and a good portion of people who watch the topic sections of the show, or watch the entire show, tend to be other Excel bloggers or Excel consultants who are looking to expand into training, looking to expand into just about anything. Certainly, podcasts is a portion of that. So I'd like to tap into that a little bit, John, if I could, since you're one of the few people outside of Chengdu that I know of that has an active Excel podcast. So first off, we want to get to the technology here in a minute, but what made you decide to start an Excel podcast to begin with?
Podcasts are big right now. Ever since 2008, after all the crash, the recession, people didn't have any jobs and they wanted to fund themselves. So they started podcasts, they started blogs, and it really took off from there. And now there's 15% of Americans have listened to a podcast in the last 12 months. There are over 250,000 podcasts on iTunes. So there are massive, 250,000 podcasts, and how many Excel podcasts are there? Only one, and that's Chengdu's. And congratulate him because he got it up there, and I thought, man, Chengdu has one, someone should have another one. So it's a great way to market your business, and it's also a great way to learn Excel from your guests and also for the listeners. This is for the listeners, because I can talk about Excel, but I don't know anything. I don't know everything about Excel. I know 80%. Okay, I'm no VBA expert. Maybe one day I will be, and that's why I love Excel, because I don't know everything. If I knew everything, I'd fall out of love with it. So it's like a woman. If you get bored of her, you go to the next one. So I always try to keep myself interested in that, in there. So that's why, the podcast. He had a show, and I liked his Q&A format shows at the start, where he interviewed Michael Alexander, and I liked that. And I thought, and then after he went more about talking about, his own show and his stuff, and I thought, I like the Q&A. So I decided to interview fellow Excel MVPs and Excel experts, because there are so many out there. And they know stuff that I don't know. They know VBA, they know Power Pivot, they know Power Query. So so what I did is I decided to get in that.
Wow. So
how many
questions? One.
Go ahead, Az. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you have these hour-long episodes in a world where the experts tell you 3 minutes. 3 minutes is long. You need to cut this down. So how are you okay with an hour or so? And the next question is about doing Excel without showing Excel.
I was thinking that too. That was going to be my question.
People drive to work and they don't have Excel on their laptops, and they're going to listen to something. And I don't go into detail of, okay, this is how to do a VLOOKUP, equals VLOOKUP. The first argument is this, the second argument is that. No. It's more about talking about the story of the Excel expert.
Yes.
People love stories and storytellers. So it's more about the background of how they became to be an Excel expert and an expert in their field. And also talking briefly, so it's introducing the Excel feature briefly, getting the lips wet, and then it's not going into greater detail. If they want to go into greater detail, there are show notes which I put on there, and they can click on the tutorial there, and then when they get into work after listening in their car or in transit, they can go in there and click in the show notes, and they'll see the tutorial that we talked about. And so podcasts, you don't need to have Excel in front of you to learn it. Well, you can go to work and listen to it in the meantime via the show notes. You can see all the tutorials, and that works well. But then you have the problem that your boss is looking over your neck. So, man, podcasts are huge, and a lot more people should get into it. I don't know why they're not getting into it. VBA people should be starting podcast show. Excel TV, you guys should just do an MP3 format and just put it as a podcast show. That's just another idea. So, yeah.
We originally started doing that. I don't really know if it's still around, but they were floating around for a minute.
Yeah, what we had decided to do, actually, this show started out as a question. I'll let Oz get to his follow-up question real quick, and then I want to expand on that a little bit on Excel TV and podcast. Go ahead, Oz.
Well, I want to thank you because my own videos have taken a different direction where maybe half of what I've done in the past few months doesn't show Excel. And I feel inspired by you and Chandu for doing Excel without showing it. And it goes back to, when I started playing bass, and you don't always need to have the bass with you. That's the actual music, the actual playing. But then it helps to hear, say, Bootsy Collins talk about his relationship with James Brown and the things that James Brown would let him get away with or would make him stop doing. His relationship with the drummers when he came in, and all of that stuff that influences how the music comes out, right? Because you're there doing, but then there's the context about what will be put up with and what won't be and what's expected and how the directions that we're needing to change, and how, in a lot of the workshops I've done, I've found people don't need more formulas. They need to lay their stuff out right, or they need to see that they don't have good processes. And that helps when you get away from the instrument and have a conversation about the context within the music or the data is happening in.
Yeah, spot on. You gotta know what's possible rather than what's available.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And what's not working and what's working.
Kind of jump back a little bit to some of the previous question then around kind of Excel TV. Gosh, we had considered that. Actually, whenever we first started Excel TV, the first idea that was floated is that we would be a podcast. And this is before Chandu had come out. We didn't think we'd be a video show. So it's like Jordan was between jobs, and he said he's starting up this consulting firm. He said, hey, we should do a podcast. I said, I thought we'd do a what?
Well, you can actually that's cool, but you can actually pull this video on the Apple Video podcast.
That's what we've done. We've done that about a year and a half ago or so. We got about 6 episodes or so in. We took an MP3 version of it and actually connected it up to the store and had a podcast, or at least one of the podcasts. And that was kind of the thought. Okay, we'll just turn these into MP3s all the way up to maybe the tips section. So all of this is kind of content, it's discussion, all of this. Why not just turn this into an MP4, create a process that does that, and then pop this out as podcast. So that was actually part of our process for a little bit, but we just kind of got away from that and haven't gotten back to it yet. But certainly that's still in our mind, which is why I'm asking such pointed questions. Because as I listen to what you've done, and I've listened to a few, and I listened to Oz's, most definitely. Oz's, yes. I was taken back by the polish that you had to your podcast, from the intros to the commercials to everything else. It just seemed very well put together. Could you talk a little bit about the technology and the processes you have in place to make all of that happen?
Sure, yeah. I had no idea before getting into this podcast scene. I listened to a lot of podcasts, and what I did, as you do, is you buy a course, an online course. And there's a great one out there called Podcast Paradise by John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire. And he has a course on making podcasts. And that's what I did. I paid that. Expensive, $1,000. But anyway. So it's a lifetime access. And what it does, it tells you what you need to do a podcast. Because I had no idea about all these equipment that I have here. I have a mixer, you got the microphone. You can see here a professional microphone that's over there. Maybe if I put that other way down there. Yeah. I had to buy all that stuff, and the course had it all laid out. So you had the section of equipment. This is what you need if you want to do the cheap way or the free way. I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to spend a bit of money because I know in the long run it's gonna be worth it. So I went, the expensive route, microphone $500, mixer $500. So I've got the equipment. So you need that, and then you need a software to record the the audio, the interview. And I use Adobe Audition, and that's like $30 a month. You can go freebie, I think it's called GarageBand. So yeah, and what I do is I do a Skype call. It's not a video Skype call. It's an audio Skype call with my interviewee, and then that gets recorded via Adobe. It records my voice and his or her voice, and that gets recorded. And then and once I record that, I do a lot of editing. The editing is the hardest bit. It takes me about like 6 hours, maybe 1 day or 2 days to do a lot of editing. And once you get all the editing right, you put the intro, the outro. You just got to upload it into a hosting server. I use the Libsyn, and that hosts your the podcast. So when people download it, it's got to come from somewhere. It comes from Libsyn. So you got all that in there, and then you got to put in a WordPress site or on your current website where you can put in the Libsyn audio player, and people can listen to your podcast. And once you put it on Apple, people have an Apple iPhone, they can automatically listen to your podcast. They can subscribe to it, and each time you bring a new podcast show, you get that alert. So, everyone has a phone now, so you can listen to a podcast on your phone. And so that's the kind of equipment that you need. You also need, a Q&A, or what format you want to do, a Q&A format, or you have a host like you guys, or it's just yourself talking. So you got to think about that before you start. And I thought about the Q&A form, and I had my avatar. Who's going to be my avatar? My listener. Her name is Dawn. She's a professional, 40 years old, working in a shitty firm for so many years, and she uses Excel but doesn't really know how to use it to its full potential. So you got to know your listener. So yeah, and then create the questions. That was a bit hard, creating the questions. And so yeah, you just got to have a format of the show. If you don't have a format of the show, then it's not going to go down well. You got to have a format of the show, follow it, and yeah, pretty much it. The intro, someone can get it done for $200, and the outro, you just say what you want. They put the music, in this course, it has everything of huge use to make the intros, the outros, and it took me 3 months, 2 to 3 months to get my head around it, to learn everything, and also press the record button, because it takes some courage as well, nerves. And it took me, like the first time I did with Chris Macro, I go, man, let's just do it. If we make mistakes, I can edit it out. And then once you get into it, it's fun. It's like this. You're like, wow, you're just talking, and you can edit it all out later. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So what's funny is that when we started Excel TV, because I had this anxiety, and I wasn't sure whether to do it. And Rick was like, spaghetti against the wall, we are going to do it.
Yes.
And then we did. And we don't really look back. I know Rick saw a few he recently rewatched the first few of the episodes. I've not, so they're kind of hard to watch. That's why I've not. But that's really, I was going to ask you some questions, but you really went through everything. That really was a podcast 101
freebie
review. Yeah, well, and it's funny because we're probably the ones doing this on Hangout, so clearly we should be rolling in the G's, right? Right, everyone? But yeah, so I did want to ask you, so have you gotten any feedback on your podcast? What are things people have liked about it? What are things that you've liked?
Yeah, I've got a lot of reviews, but I did a promotion. One other thing is to promote your podcast, and I got all these other affiliates to promote my podcast to get reviews so you can get ranked. The feedback, some people said, you can't see Excel, so you're not going to learn. So I go, okay, well, that's not the path that I'm going, so I'm going to ignore you. Another person said, it's too long, it's an hour long, I only need 15 minutes. I understand that, but pause it, do your workout, and then next day, tomorrow, listen to the other 15 minutes. You're not going to make everyone happy, so you got to know what you want to do and stick with it, And currently, I'm getting, I'm getting 4,000 downloads a month.
Oh, wow.
I've been going for 6 months. And that's okay. I want to get to 10,000, I want to get to more, but I'm just starting out. And you're going to be there for about 12 months. You're going to have a few shows to get traction. And man, I just want to introduce Excel to more people, Excel MVPs and experts to more people, and just get the word out. That's the thing, man. If people don't listen to it, well, they don't listen to it. I'm having fun creating it, and so.
Awesome.